Hide your wife and hide your mother. Zach Wilson is on the prowl. It's time for garbage time. Guys, welcome into Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Tonight, we are going over the AFC North, and our hunting days are long over, unlike Zach Wilson's. How are you doing tonight, Ryan?
Good. How are you?
Doing fantastic. It was a crazy few hours there on Twitter yesterday, hearing that kind of story, so that'll be fun when we get into the news. As stated before, guys, tonight we are going to break down the AFC North for fantasy football tonight. But before we do that, if you happen to like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show here on YouTube. And also, if you'd like to listen to us in audio format, you can do that on Apple, Spotify, Google, Pandora, Amazon, Iheartradio, and Tunein. And if you want to leave a voice or a hate mail, especially about Zach Wilson's new legendary status, you can leave that at www.garbagetimeff.com. And without further ado, Ryan, are you ready to get into the news?
I am.
Let's do it. Let's talk about this legendary status.
News updates.
All right, let's talk about the man, the myth, the legend, Zach Wilson. So, this isn't very fantasy football relevant, but being a Jets fan, I thought it was good enough to bring on in the slow portion of the summer when there's not a lot to talk about for football. So let's take a quick diversion for fantasy football and talk about this funny-ass story that kind of came out over the weekend. So it was reported on Twitter over the weekend that Zach Wilson's ex-girlfriend, we're not quite sure who broke up with who, was getting kind of duped on Twitter, being called what I believed was a homie hopper because she's now dating his former best friend from BYU, his former wide receiver, Dax Mullane, I believe is his name. And under a comment where she was being called a homie hopper, she relayed this rumor saying that, no, Zach Wilson is now the homie hopper because he was the one banging one of his mom's friends. And that's the reason why they broke up. So, Ryan, it sounded like she wanted this to go one way and to ruin his reputation. What do you think about this? About Zach Wilson's new status among the NFL as probably the new favorite quarterback in the NFL.
I think it's hilarious. Like, could you imagine him just waking up and hopping on Twitter? And just, like, I think Zach Wilson just had watched too many Pornhub storylines.
Probably, yeah. No, I think he obviously did. And like you kind of stated too, when he was in high school, was it high school or college, he brought two girls to one dance. I mean, come on, we couldn't have seen this coming, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so now I've got to ask you the most serious question of the night. Who's the cooler quarterback? Is it Joe Burrow or is it Zach Wilson?
Ooh. I don't know. It's Zach Wilson just shot up to the top. I mean, you have people talking about him that would have never talked to him. So right now, Zach Wilson is he might be cooler at the current moment.
Yeah, and the Jets since 2018 haven't scored more than 40, so that has now changed too. So it's nice to see that someone's finally scoring on the Jets.
Already breaking records.
Wow. All right, moving on from that story. First serious news that we have tonight. Jeremy Fowler was reporting that AFC personnel evaluators said that Broncos are tailoring the team's offense for Russell Wilson. So what's your thoughts on them tailoring the offense towards Russell Wilson? Isn't this obvious news?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's what you would expect to happen.
Yeah, you would kind of think this is a non-story.
Yeah, that's basically what you have to do.
Does this have any impact on his fantasy status? I don't think it changes at all.
No, it's just what people figured.
You're like, no, move on from this bullshit. Next story I've got for you, and some points that you brought up before the show too, and I think you can get into, is Jimmy Garoppolo's agent refuted rumors that Garoppolo may be traded to the Buccaneers to be Tom Brady's eventual replacement, replacing his old role as the Patriots' backup. So what's your thoughts on him potentially not going to the Bucs? And where do you think he could potentially go? What's a good landing spot for him?
Yeah, I'm hearing I got a few alerts to rumors that he might still be, that the Seahawks are still looking at him. I did see the Tampa Bay rumor. The agent came out and said that that wasn't accurate. I don't know if Tom Brady would really be open to him coming back as his backup. Things got a little testy in New England there for a little bit when Jimmy G was there. So I'm saying that
I don't think Jimmy G would be open to being his backup again, too. I think he's done that once and he doesn't want to do it again.
Yeah, to me, it sounds like him to the Seahawks makes the most sense.
It really does. And there was rumors a few weeks ago saying that the 49ers close to training camp could potentially cut him as long as there's not like an injury to Trey Lance or something along those lines. And if you're going to end up cutting him, he's probably going to go to the Seahawks at this point because they're potentially his best chance to win. And if you could get the pick, even though it's a divisional rival, just take the late round pick anyway. It just kind of seems to make sense here. And we're just kind of connecting the dots here too. But I think they would have really good fantasy impact for DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I agree. It would. I mean, they're looking like they're going to be in for a rough season. So putting someone like Jimmy G in, who still is probably just an average quarterback, would still boost all their stock compared to rolling with Drew Lock.
Would DK Metcalf getting Jimmy Garoppolo as a quarterback potentially roll him back up to a wide receiver 1 for this year?
I think so, yeah.
All right, next little news that we have on the night. ESPN's Marcel Louis-Jacques writes that if Solomon Ahmed doesn't play this well during training camp, he's potentially on the training camp roster bubble for the Dolphins. So do you think that he's potentially going to miss the cut for the Dolphins due to this huge long list of running backs that they brought in during free agency and the draft?
Yeah, I'd say absolutely. The number of running backs they're rostering is just insane. So you're going to have to make some cuts. To have so much of your roster dedicated to one position is kind of nuts.
Yep. And a lot of us out there were wondering why offensive tackle Dwayne Brown hasn't been picked up. This might have something to do with it. He was arrested in Los Angeles International Airport on Saturday for possession of a concealed firearm. Now, let's hold our horses before we, make judgment on this, because this has happened to a few players where they come from states with looser gun laws, a la certain Jets defensive tackle, and then they get jammed up in an airport because they haven't secured something right. So what's your thoughts on this potentially for Dwayne Brown's future? Do you think he could help a team out potentially in the running game for fantasy football? Or do you think this is something that could really hamper him this year?
Just don't bring your gun to the airport. Just
it seems pretty explanatory.
The risk reward just isn't there. It's chances are you're going to screw something up. Just don't do it. You're a millionaire. When you get to where you're going, buy a new one if you have a permit and everything. Just don't stop bringing your guns to the airport.
It sounds like an excellent idea. Next little bit of story that I've got for you up here is actually about the 49ers again. The Athletics' Ted Nugent reports that Trey Lance's reports of his arm fatigue being out there are way overblown, and this is a non-story. Do you believe this, or do you think that the 49ers beat reporters actually have something right this time?
I don't know. I think during the offseason, I guess you'd probably assume everything might be blown out of proportion a little bit. They read into everything a little bit too much. I know our buddy JJ there is definitely hoping that those reports aren't accurate. So I guess it's just a wait and see. It's kind of hard to know off of what beat others are saying until you start to see the preseason games.
Yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying there too. And I don't really think he's got arm fatigue. This is just a non-story. And listen, the beat reporters are going to go out there and see what they think they see. And these are some pretty shitty beat reporters out there with the 49ers. So I don't think they know what they're seeing. So I don't believe a word they're saying. He'll rest up. His arm's going to be fine. And this isn't going to be an issue going into the season. Reporters last offseason were saying that Jamar Chase was going to be horrible and he wasn't picking up the offense for the Bengals. On the West Coast, this is no different, except this is in the eyes of a quarterback. Watch him be the best passing quarterback in the league this year, just because the beat writers are saying it's not going to happen otherwise.
Right?
It's just the way it rolls in the NFL. Do you have any other stories you want to talk about, Ryan? It sounded like you had some things to talk about.
Yeah, just the only other thing was I was hearing rumors about possible Kareem Hunt, saying that an extension probably isn't likely some people are thinking he might get traded, but some reports are even saying like a mid-season trade. Do you foresee that happening? And what do you think it would do to his fantasy value if he were to go to a different team?
I think that's all going to dictate on whether the Browns are actually competing this year, which if they miss Deshaun Watson for 8 games, it's going to be hard for them to tread water and be competing this year. So if they're maybe 2-6 and right at that trade deadline, I could very well see him getting traded, especially if they don't want to spend a lot of money on him because they threw $230 million at a quarterback that's going to be suspended for at least half a season this year. So, they need to save money somewhere. They've got some running backs that we'll get into that are viable behind Nick Chubb. So,
got Aaron in there.
Exactly, and we'll get into that when we talk about the Browns too. So I think this is a possibility. I don't think you would see a trade until midseason potentially. My gut feeling is that they're not going to trade him, and they'll see what they can do with him in the offseason. Well, that maybe franchise him and trade him, maybe try to lowball him on a contract. I think they want to keep this tandem together. So we'll see what ends up happening with that. Do you have anything else for the heckling fandom, Ryan?
No, that's it.
Guys, if you hear any news too and have any comments too, feel free. If you don't want to leave comments here on YouTube, you can contact us on the message board on Instagram at Garbage Time Fantasy Football. Or if you'd rather talk to JJ, the Chicago Bears fan, you can contact us at garbage_time_FF. Ryan, you ready to see that gyrating man for the 6th time?
Let's go for it.
But he doesn't gyrate like Sam Darnold. I mean, it's a close second to the newly crowned king of the NFL. All right. So as we've already explained, this is the 6th part of our series in the divisional breakdown for fantasy football. So, Ryan, I am going to throw the ball into your court. Which one of the 4 teams in the NFC North would you like to discuss first?
Let's start right off with the Ravens. I think there's a lot to talk about with that team. And it will be interesting. So, let's kick off with the high-scoring Ravens.
All right, if that's what we're going to do, I will start with the first question. So, can Lamar Jackson remain as a top 5 quarterback with Hollywood Brown gone?
All right, so I'm ready to make Ron real upset.
Ooh, is this going to be a bold take?
For me, it's not even remaining in top 5 because he wasn't top 5 last season. Finished QB 13. Even if you go to week 13 before his 1-point game where he got injured, he was QB 7. In 2020, he was QB 10, I believe. So wasn't in the top 5 then. And honestly, I don't think he's top 5 this upcoming season either. So he lost Hollywood Brown, who accounted for about 20 to 25% of his passing volume. He does have Rashod Bateman, so I think that Rashod Bateman's going to pick up a lot of that work, but I still don't see him as top 5. Last season, QB 7, that was even with some really explosive games, put up 41 against Indy, 35 against KC. So that just shows how inconsistent some of his play had been to come in at 20 points per game. So I'm putting him out of the top 5 this year.
Well, you may have pooped your pants like Lamar Jackson. That's probably about the size of the shit Lamar Jackson took in that locker room when he went back there and just absolutely came back and torched the Browns. I do think he's going to be at least pretty close to the top 5. I think he's a lock for the top 5 this year. Listen, that running game is going to be returning for him this year. I know there's kind of talk about J.K. Dobbins potentially not being ready for the start of the season, but Gus Edwards is going to be back there. They're going to return to that 2019 offense where he's going to get a lot of running work this year. The offensive line is going to be healthy. I think he's going to return to top 5 status. So I think your assessment on that situation is wrong. I think he's going to be in the top 5.
Let me give you some quarterbats for you. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Tom Brady.
I wouldn't take Tom Brady. Nope.
Pat Mahomes.
Yes.
Matt Stafford.
No.
Dak.
No.
Aaron Rodgers.
Nope.
Joe Burrow. Kyler Murray.
So where are we at? That'd be 4 or 5. I'll put him at a tie with Kyler Murray. I think Kyler Murray's probably slightly better, so I'll call him 5A and 5B.
All right, so you're still putting him fringe top 5 then?
About 5 and 6 where I'd put him. You're saying he's clearly not going to be on the top 5 though, so I think that's kind of a shit take on your part.
I wouldn't say it's a shit take. I'm saying out of the top. I'm not saying he's going to be QB 15 or anything, I'm definitely saying out of top 5.
Yeah, you're underrating him a little bit, I think. I mean, I don't love him like Ron loves him. You know, he's definitely going to be taking him in the auction league again, and he's willing to spend all this money to get him.
As my trade last season showed, I am notoriously undervaluing Lamar Jackson all the time.
You traded him for Zach Wilson, who is now on my roster in our auction league.
It's not a shocker that I'm once again putting him out of the top 5. But the Ravens also have a tough schedule for quarterbacks. They're ranked 30 out of 32 in strength of schedule for QBs.
That's cool because Lamar Jackson's basically a running back too, so that doesn't really matter.
All right, just saying.
He's going to be fine. All right, next question I got for you then too, now that you say Lamar Jackson's going to be in the top 5. Is Mark Andrews the top fantasy tight end this year in all of fantasy football, or has he got some competition at the top with the likes of Travis Kelce?
I think he's got competition. I mean, Travis Kelce on that Chiefs offense will always give him a competition, but Mark Andrews, I think, will definitely be at least the top 5 tight end. Like I said, you had Hollywood Brown that took up about 25% of Lamar's passing volume. That's up for grabs. Mark Andrews had a monster year this past season. I don't see any reason why that won't continue. So I'm going to say yes.
Top 5. He's going to be the number 1 best tight end in the league this year, and that's why he's going to be my keeper. He's going to get a hyper amount of targets at him this year. Whether this is a run-heavy team, someone needs to move the chains on third down when they need that, and it's going to be Mark Andrews, absolutely no doubt. The volume's going to be insane. The workload's going to be insane. There just isn't the proven pieces on the Ravens' offense there anymore like Hollywood Brown. The only proven piece there, again, is going to be Mark Andrews. Travis Kelce is going to be 33, and Mark Andrews is simply just entering his prime now. And we saw what happened last year when he got hyper-targeted. He performed. Look for that to be the formula again this year. My gut is telling me he's going to be a league winner for people this year. I really like Mark Andrews that much.
One more thing. I am circling back a little bit. Reports came out Lamar Jackson has bulked up a little bit for this season, has gained about 15 pounds. They're hoping that helps with the injuries, makes him a little bit more durable. Do you see this impacting his rushing ability or agility in any way?
I think his durability will help a little bit. I think he bulked up a little bit to try to stay in the field a little bit more. Not that it's really been too much of an issue with him, a game or two last year. But no, I don't think this is really going to affect him this much. I think he's more trying to make himself look good for a nice new beefy contract and not just a new beefy figure.
Fair enough.
He is very much looking for that contract, which is probably why he's not showing up to camp right now. But, the real camp starts in a few weeks. So we'll see how that works out.
Yep.
Next question I got for you. Does Rashod Bateman have low-key wide receiver 1 upside in this Ravens offense? Or is this cannon fodder?
No, I say definitely. Without Hollywood Brown, he's the wide receiver 1 in that offense.
Mm-hmm.
Again, 25% of the passing where it's up for grabs. Hollywood, even with kind of the low passing volume of Jackson, where he didn't throw as much as other QBs, Hollywood was still getting about 1,000 receiving yards a season. So I definitely think Rashod Bateman has the wide receiver 1 upside.
Would you rather have him or Jalen Waddle?
Ooh.
For 2022.
Oof. You're putting me in a cold Tate spot.
Do you need me to start that 60-second timer for you? I'm more than happy to. Let's start the Ryan Warner 60-second timer and see if you can get an answer in before then. If I can find the timer. There it is.
No, you find it?
I did. It's going up in the corner. See it?
I'm going to go Jalen Waddle. I really like him. He showed how he's got a lot of versatility. They were able to use him in a lot of different spots on that offense. The Dolphins do have a ton of weapons in there now, but I still think Tyreek might steal a lot of the coverage. So I'm still going to go Jalen Waddle.
Boy, this is a tough question. I'm glad I didn't have to answer it. Just like last week, too, when I was asking you about the wide receiver 2s of many, many teams. I think the answer here is Waddle here, too. I think he's just going to get a lot of targets this year. That Dolphins offense, even with that piece of shit quarterback, is going to be effective because they're going to have a lot of volume short passes to him, and that's Jalen Waddle's security blanket. I think he's going to have a good year. Rashod Bateman, I think is going to have an effective year, but the kind of style he plays is a long target. So he kind of goes on the field and gets the ball. He's not really the Hollywood Brown kind of wide receiver. I think he's going to be a high-end wide receiver 2, not quite that wide receiver 1 upside. I think you're going to have quite a value with Rashod Bateman, who's the number 1 wide receiver in this offense, and his ADP is currently low. And you will have quite a value with him. So don't be afraid to take him in those later rounds if he's hanging up there with the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have to choose between the two, and it may be a hard decision.
What is Bateman? I just want to see what his ADP is right now. Yeah, wide receiver 38 right now.
Good value.
So
Great value.
He's down in like wide receiver 3 range right now.
I really like him for this year. Do you have any other interest in any of these other wide receivers for the Ravens? We've talked about Devin Duvernay quite a bit on the show, but there's reports out saying James Poach is right now the wide receiver 2 on the Ravens. Do you believe that's the case? Or do you think they're trying to push Devin Duvernay, and do either of these guys have fantasy football value this year?
I don't really know about who's wide receiver 2 or 3, but I don't really have much value in them. I'm not looking at them a ton. Like you said, a lot of everybody else on this offense is relatively unproven. Lamar, because of his rushing ability, doesn't throw a ton. 2,700 passing yards in 2020.
27,000. Wow, that's amazing.
That'd be crazy. 2,700 passing yards in 2020. You got Bateman, you got Mark Andrews. They are going to take up a ton of that. So I just don't see the value for the other guys.
All right, that's fair enough. I think Devin Duvernay's got nice end of the draft potential, just based on the spot that there is going to be some volume that can be picked up in this offense. But I think a lot of that volume, now that I've done a little bit more research into it, I think is going to go into the running backs. Maybe Gus Edwards, who's on the back end of my bench in the Dynasty League, if J.K. Dobbins sits out. But we'll have to see how that goes. Most of it's going to go Mark Andrews' ways, so it doesn't really matter at this point. And it's a small slice of pie because Lamar Jackson is a rushing quarterback, a very, very heavy rushing quarterback. So next question I've got for you. We already mentioned the running backs a little bit on the show, but big question for you. Will J.K. Dobbins actually start week 1 for the Baltimore Ravens this year?
I don't think so. It's looking like he's going to miss all of preseason. They don't plan to have him playing at all during preseason. Mm-hmm. So I don't see him starting week 1.
Where's his value in redraft for you then?
Honestly, like, I don't have much interest in them in that Ravens backfield at all.
Oh, really?
You have Dobbins, Edwards. You've got Mike Davis back there. You got Hill. In PPR leads, like you just kind of alluded to, Lamar Jackson does not really throw to running backs. So that receiving work isn't really there. And you might be able to argue that Davis might steal most of the receiving work.
Never thought I'd hear that.
Yeah. So I don't think I want any of it. Even though J.K. Dobbins is super talented, Gus Edwards performed well when Dobbins was out. I don't know. It seems a little bit too crowded for me.
That alluded to my next question here and I didn't think I was going to say this until a few weeks ago when we started hearing these reports on J.K. Dobbins. Is Gus Edwards the safer back to take in fantasy in the later rounds than J.K. Dobbins in the earlier rounds?
Yeah, I think if you take Edwards in the later rounds, you at least can probably assume he will be playing the whole year. Even when Dobbins is in, it's basically a 50-50 split between those two guys. So I would say Edwards probably is the safer pick.
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to say about the Ravens until we moved on to our next team?
I don't think so.
All right. So next team I want to talk about, we'll get the Pittsburgh Steelers out of the way. This is a very hard one. So, we can't leave it all easy for you, Ryan. So here we go. This one may make JJ very happy or piss him off. So let's get your opinion on it. What does a Kenny Pickett and Mitch Trubisky fantasy offense look like? So compare and contrast for me. What do they look like for fantasy football? Is there value here with either one of them starting?
It's hard. So the Steelers as a team, like they have a lot of talent there. I mean, you could basically argue that the quarterbacks might be the only part where the talent's questionable. So the talent on the team, I think, can hide a lot of the shortcomings. They still perform pretty well, even with Ben Roethlisberger, a shell of his former self.
The ghost of Ben Roethlisberger.
So I mean, he had no arm. He wasn't mobile anymore. So, I think I could see a lot of the offense running through Najee Harris. I think they're going to have to use him a lot.
Are you saying a ghost isn't going to save them? That's what I think you said, right?
Yeah.
That's all right. Our ghost isn't on the show either. You know what? I think you found secret door answer number 3 here. You were playing Let's Make a Deal, and you wanted what was behind curtain number 3. It wasn't a bad answer. It's a very, very political non-answer from you there, Ryan Warner. So I'm going to answer this, and I'm going to answer it the same freaking way. I have all offseason to piss JJ off right now. Mitch Trubisky is not going to start for the Steelers. Listen, the Steelers spent first-round capital on their hometown boy, Kenny Pickett, because they see his little hands being their future Drew Brees. This is a pass-happy offense, even with Najee Harris running in it. I think Najee Harris is going to get the bulk of the work this season. They'll look to ease him into the offense, potentially looking for Kenny Pickett to be their savior in year 2. So I don't think Pickett's going to be great for fantasy football in year 1. And this does drive down the fantasy value of Diontae Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Pickens in this offense because it's not going to be very pass-happy. Who is going to benefit from it this year is Najee Harris. But that is complicated because teams are going to stack the box because there's a rookie quarterback out there. They would rather the rookie quarterback prove to them that he can actually pass as opposed to having Najee Harris split their backfield because they don't stack the box. So I think the rookie's going to start from the beginning. I think they're going to take their lickings early, and I think we'll see the Steelers come out and perform a little bit better in the second half of the year. Probably miss the playoffs with a rookie, but I think that he's going to start in week 1, and Mitch Trubisky rides the bench. So what does a fantasy offense look like for Mitch Trubisky? Non-existent because it's not going to happen. Next question. Absolutely. Next question I've got for you, Ryan. Can Najee Harris finish as the top running back in the NFL this year just based on the volume that he's going to be filling the hole for a rookie QB this year and needs the volume for them to perform well?
I mean, it's definitely possible. I don't think you could absolutely rule it out. Finished RB4 as a rookie, had 94 targets last season. You'd see him being a nice security blanket for whoever is back there at the quarterback position. So you could see those targets pretty much stay where they are. Had over 1,000 yards rushing. What do you come in at? 1,200 actually. With 7 touchdowns. Really, what hurt him this past season is only 7 touchdowns, where the 2 guys he finished RB3. I'm sorry. The 2 guys ahead of him had 12 and 18. So if you see those touchdown numbers jump up a little bit, it's definitely possible for him to finish RB1.
Yeah, so I really don't think this really falls into the outcomes for Najee Harris this upseason. There's a lot of different takes on him. There's some people who think you should fade him because the rookie may be playing for them this year. The box may be stacked. There are some that are giving him that credit of him being very good this upcoming season. They think he's gonna have a better season than his rookie season. I think you're going to see a little bit more of the same from him. Same thing as last year, except you're going to be paying a premium for it. I see him falling more in that 3 to 5 range. So I don't think that he's going to be the top overall running back this year. Is that out of the question for next year, though? No, I don't think so. He's talented enough to get there. Pittsburgh always seems to have a good offensive line and have a good running game. But this year, I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for him. But just based on volume, I think he'll finish in that 3 to 5 range, and I think that's where you should draft him.
Yep.
All right, let's go on to Diontae Johnson. Is Diontae Johnson going under the radar currently?
I don't think he's really under the radar. Finished wide receiver 8 last season, I think. His ADP and PPR right now puts him at wide receiver 13. Given either Mitch Trubisky or a rookie quarterback coming in, I think that's pretty much. I think that's fair that he's where he's at.
Yeah. So Diontae Johnson kind of feels like a low-end wide receiver 2 coming into this year. I think some people aren't giving him enough credit. He's definitely talented, but there's a reason why the Steelers don't want to extend him. They seem to always tend to pick the ones that are correct for that team. Not that all Steelers leave the team and are unproductive. We've seen Antonio Brown being productive as he's left. Juju's being all right. He's not great. We'll see what he does with the Chiefs this year. But it looks like Diontae Johnson's kind of going down that path, and they may want to try to get these younger guys more involved in the offense. Their Claypools, their George Pickens. They have another rookie they drafted too. He's obviously their number one right now, but I kind of think this is going to be a wide receiver by committee because this is a very talented committee. Diontae Johnson, though, if he ended up in the right offense, maybe another trade line candidate, as we've talked about with other players like Kareem Hunt, who we will get into. Could be productive for you in the second half of the year if he got traded. That's something historically Pittsburgh doesn't have a problem doing is trading away talent if they can get some value for him and they don't want to pay for him. That'll be also record pending as we talk about that with the Browns later with Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so now what is your thoughts on Chase Claypool or George Pickens? Is there any fantasy value for these two guys?
There might be. They might be worth like a late round flyer. They do have the third easiest schedule for wide receivers, but again, that quarterback position is kind of a big question mark right now. So
is Chase Claypool worth a 10th round pick?
I'm gonna say yeah.
George Pickens?
I'm gonna say no. I'd take him a little bit later.
I think 10th round pick on Chase Claypool is more than fair based on what we've seen for him. Like, we've seen games where he's gone insane. There's been a few of them. Not many, but he really fell off last year. So there's something obviously to be held for that. But who knows? Maybe the rookie comes in and creates that chemistry with him. You never know, and he's immensely talented. There's no reason why he couldn't take the lead by storm again. So I think a 10th round pick is more than fair for someone like Chase Claypool. Is he the top 3 wide receiver he says he is? No. But he's a very good wide receiver, and he's talented enough to show that again. Going to be tough for the rookie quarterback because that rookie quarterback is going to be starting all year, J.J. LaPlante. But, yes, definitely worth the late-round flyer. See no problem with that. As for George Pickens, he's a very interesting dynasty option. I like him as a dynasty option. Obviously, Pittsburgh saw what they liked there with him. But I don't think I would be taking him for redraft this year.
Yep.
All right. Last question on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Is Pat Freiermuth Dynasty Football Gold? And is he a good redraft player for this year?
Yes, I'm going to say yes to both. It's no secret that I love Pat Freiermuth. Finished tight end 13 for his rookie season, but up to week 6, it's worth noting he was kind of splitting with Ebron. After Ebron's injury and he was out, Freiermuth was tight end 7 from that time on.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, his ADP has him going at tight end 12. So I'm all in on Freiermuth. If I'm able to snag him as the 12th tight end in my redraft, then absolutely.
I'm going to give you another opportunity to be quite bold here. Is he going to have a better season than Kyle Pitts, Ryan Warner? You seem very, very high on him.
Better season than Kyle Pitts.
I said Kyle Pitts is top 3. You seem to be down on Kyle Pitts, so this is your chance to say Pat Freiermuth is going to have a better season than Kyle Pitts. Is it going to happen?
How low was I on Pitts? Did I say out of top 10? I did, didn't I?
I think you did.
All right, yeah. I'm going to say Freiermuth has a better season than Kyle Pitts.
Where does he finish and where does Kyle Pitts finish?
So Kyle Pitts, I put outside top 10. I just don't have faith in Mariota. I will say I'm going to put Freiermuth at tight end 5.
Wow. All right. Mark that, JJ, because that may be on the Cold Take video next year. We finally have a good Ryan Warner take for the videos.
You guys are
Pat Freiermuth and Kyle Pitts. Let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. Next team we're going to talk about. We'll talk about Cleveland next and then get into the Super Bowl appearing Bengals after that. How does that sound?
The dumpster fire that is the Cleveland Browns.
Let's talk about it. They always seem to shoot themselves in the foot. So First question I'm going to ask you, and we won't circle around it too long because we have beaten this to the end of the earth on Garbage Time Fantasy Football. How many games is Deshaun Watson going to be suspended?
So I'm going to say 8. I think I read an article the other day that the NFL came out and suggested a full season, and he said no way, and it's going to arbitration. So I kind of see the middle ground being 8 games.
Yeah, I think that's exactly where it's going to end up too. Is he worth drafting in fantasy football then? He's a hell of a quarterback if he actually does play.
I don't think so.
Flyer.
I think I'm out maybe as a late round flyer. You're right. But I'm kind of out because if he's out 8 games, that puts you pretty late.
All right, here's an interesting scenario. 10th round, 8-game suspension, draft Deshaun Watson or Chase Claypool.
I'd probably do Deshaun Watson. You know me. I'll have 6 wide receivers by then.
I think I'd still go with Chase Claypool. But yeah, no, it's an interesting question to fodder, and I think an interesting scenario question, especially for this part of the offseason. So could he be a league winner for you if you actually got him back on the field? Could he be that top 5 quarterback in the second half of the season, or would he just be too rusty?
He could be. I mean, if you get him and you have a pretty solid team other than that, and you get him just in time for playoffs, then it's definitely possible. It just is all going to depend on who you got in quarterback there. But
yeah,
I don't know that because it'll have been a year and a half since he's played.
Yeah, and speaking of other quarterbacks, the one who's actually going to start the season, and we know this is going to happen now. Does Jacoby Brissett have any dynasty value as a fill-in for rosters? I mean, he seems talented. Always has.
So the last 2 times he played full seasons was 2019, 2017. He finished QB 20 and QB 24th. So to me, that might give him low end QB2 value in Superflex leagues. You would get some of that upside. I think it would be risky. I wouldn't do it.
So you'd more just look to, especially in Superflex Dynasty leagues, pick him off the waivers for the end of your bench?
Yeah, I don't think I'd draft him.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I wouldn't draft him either. Don't worry about that. I would pick him off the waivers, though, and throw him on the bench. I've got younger quarterbacks, and one of them doesn't perform, and you need maybe that 3rd or 4th QE. Jacoby Brissett isn't bad for 8 weeks. You can always cut him in, then pick up other flyers and cycle players from that roster. So Jacoby Brissett is a nice end of the ad for your dynasty rosters, not for redraft. Don't do that. Yeah, I know, kind of creepy, quiet sentiment I made about Jacoby Brissett there. Let's talk about Nick Chubb now. So Nick Chubb always kind of seems to be underrated and people disrespect him. So question going into this year, is Nick Chubb an underrated fantasy running back, as always, because he seems to perform even when he's had bad quarterbacks in the past?
Yeah, so I feel like a lot of people don't talk about him just because he's in that split backfield, but finished RB8 last season. He's currently being drafted at RB10. I think that's pretty much right where you can take him, and he's going to produce. I think he averages like 5-something yards per carry. I do think he's undervalued a little bit because of that split backfield, but with their questionable quarterback situation now, I could see him getting a lot of work. So I definitely think he's worth a pick.
Top 5 kind of year for Nick Chubb?
I don't think top 5. I'd definitely say top 10 though.
Okay. Yeah, no, it's about the range I would put him into. Between that, I'll say he finishes between that 5 to 10. We'll get exact rankings when we get to the running back rankings, which will be in a few weeks here. So yeah, I think that 5 to 10 range is perfect for Nick Chubb. And yes, he's always disrespected around the league. So take him with confidence in that range. He's going to get a lot of work this year, especially if Kareem Hunt gets traded. And I'm sure you'll want to talk about that shortly. So without him being traded, you can talk about that after. Is Kareem Hunt a low-end running back 2 if he stays on the Browns the entire year, even with Jacoby Brissett potentially throwing him the ball for a large, extended amount of time this year?
I'm going to say yeah. I'm going to say yes. Kareem Hunt stays healthy if he plays the whole season. I think I could see RB2 numbers. If you go back to 2020, I believe he got injured last season, so he didn't play the full season. Back to 2020, him and Nick Chubb finished 10 and 11. So those two, I mean, they're an amazing 1-2 punch, and they pretty much finish around the same spot. So I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, I mean, I could very easily see him finish in the top 15 in the league too, because like you just stated, him and Chubb have done this before, and with lesser quarterbacks. Jacoby Brissett's at least a polished veteran, can at least get it done and hold down the fort if, their $230 million suspended quarterback is back after week 8 and then could perform very well after because, he's a game-changing quarterback. So, yeah, I could see Kareem Hunt doing this year if he stays on the roster for the entire year. But the problem is, and you pointed this out earlier, What's their record going to be? And are they going to look to save salary cap space by potentially trading him halfway through the season? Do you think it happens?
I think it does. I think if they don't have any intention of re-signing him, I don't know what their salary cap looks like, but I'm going to assume there's not a ton of it if they just paid Watson that boatload of money. So, like you kind of alluded to earlier, if you're not going to re-sign him, why not trade him away and get something out of it?
Who's more likely to be traded, Diontae Johnson or Kareem Hunt, mid-season?
I'm going to say Kareem Hunt.
All right. And is there any interest in Dearness Johnson in redraft or dynasty formats?
I think the biggest question is going to be the Kareem Hunt situation. He might be someone that you pick, that if you have a spare roster spot, pick him up on waivers and see what happens. He did perform in games where he got a significant amount of touches. Week 7 versus Denver, got 22 touches, went for 140 yards, 22 fantasy points. Against New England, unfortunately, 19 touches, 99 yards, 16 fantasy points. So Dearness Johnson is talented, and he can produce when he's given the work. So if Hunt goes out, then I think Johnson would definitely be worth a look in redraft leagues.
I don't think I would touch him in redraft. Potentially pick him off the waiver. I don't think he would be my last waiver spot there.
Even so, but if Hunt's traded, you would definitely be looking at him, right?
Oh yeah, that's a completely different situation. But to draft him is with my last spot on my roster. No, I would look much other directions. But on waivers, yeah, if Hunt's traded, he's one of my top waiver priorities. Ernest did perform when Hunt wasn't there, and he could fill that role perfectly. In a very run-heavy offense, especially with them looking to take the pressure off Jacoby Brissett the first half of the season, just hoping to survive until Deshaun Watson is hopefully there in their eyes. So yeah, he's more of a waiver target, not really someone I'm looking in redraft. Dynasty, you can add him if you've got a huge roster, put him on the taxi squad for this year, just something along those lines.
Absolutely.
Moving on to Amari Cooper. What is his fantasy value for this upcoming season with a very strange quarterback situation?
Yeah, so with the quarterback nightmare, kind of a boring take here, but I'm out. I'm out on Cooper. I'm out on Bell. I'm out on Njoku. I don't think I want any part of it. I think Hunt and Chubb are the only guys on this team I would be looking at all.
So you're completely out on Amari Cooper?
Yep, out.
All right, so for fantasy football aspects, what is his current value to you then? I know out, but what's the farthest you could see him drop to where you'd actually take him?
Let me see. What's his current? I mean, Cooper is super talented, obviously, but I just want to see what his current. So his current ADP has him at wide receiver 23. Overall 54. So that's like round. What is that? Round 5, round 6. I would say round. I'm lower than everybody else, so I'd say round 6 or 7.
That's probably about where I would take it. Probably around 6. I think 7's a little bit too low for him, Ryan. I think you're discounting him a little bit. He's still the number 1 wide receiver in this Browns offense, and he's proven to be very good with the Raiders and the Cowboys. So
just the Browns, man.
Yeah, but someone in this offense has got to perform. I understand, you're really down in the wide receiver position for the Browns.
Someone's got.
It's different quarterbacks this year. And he's still the number 1. He's still a number 1 in an offense, and a decent offense. It's not a horrible offense. Even when Jacoby Brissett throwing the ball, I think Amari Cooper's going to have a decent year. It's not like Geno Smith's going to be throwing him the ball.
What are you putting him at? Wide receiver 3?
Yeah, probably high-end wide receiver 3 with mid-level wide receiver 2 potential this year. And if Deshaun Watson gets back to the team, he could be high-end wide receiver 2 potential. There's no one else to throw to at the wide receiver position for the Browns.
Yeah,
that wouldn't be until later in the season.
Yeah, I'm thinking at least 8 weeks.
Any interest in any of these other players for the Browns? Is David Bell a good dynasty value? Is David Njoku a fade? Any thoughts on these players?
Bell for dynasty value, I could see a world where that works out, especially if Deshaun Watson serves his 8 games, gets out, stops doing weird stuff. But yeah, I'm gonna say Bell. I for dynasty. He's only 21. If Deshaun Watson's back and stays out of trouble, they signed him to a multi-year contract, so it could work out for David Bell.
Okay, all right, let's move on to another team. So let's talk again about a man, a myth, a legend, a Bengal, not a Cougar, Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. So first question for the Bengals I got for you. Is Joe Burrow going to carry fantasy football teams, win in the fantasy playoffs, and help them roll to another championship again this year like he did last year?
Oof. All right. You're gonna shit take me again, which is fine.
Can't do too many shit takes a video. I mean, in every single video.
I'm just gonna accept it. I think Joe Burrow regresses a little bit. Finished QB8 last season. He did the last 2 days, so he has a pretty hard strength schedule for quarterbacks. Finished off the season week 16 and 17 where he got to play Baltimore and KC. So obviously high scoring games, high passing games, which really kind of boosted his numbers there, putting up like 35 fantasy points. Before that, his highest was like 27. His current ADP is QB6, even though last season he was only QB6 3 times. So I'm going to say a little bit of regression here. They did boost that O-line, so he's not sacked 70 times, hopefully.
That'll help, I think, a little bit.
But if you draft Joe Burrow, you're not going to completely whiff on it. It's not like you're going to draft Joe Burrow and he's going to finish QB 15 or something. But I do think there's going to be a little bit of a regression, and I don't think you're going to see those 2 back-to-back 35-point games that you got when he played Ravens and KC to finish out his year.
I mean, looking at his – no, I think you're correct here. Not for the reason that Joe Burrow isn't awesome, but his last 4 weeks, they're playing some pretty tough teams. The defenses are –
yeah.
We'll go all the way back to December 11th. It's the Browns who have a good secondary. Then they play the Bucs who have a pretty good defense. They're playing the Patriots who, while they lost some defensive players, always seem to scheme up right and be rolling that time of the year. The Bills, and they finish with the Ravens. That's a tough schedule at the end of the year. So that's something to take into account when you're considering Joe Burrow. I think you'll still have solid numbers in those games.
Absolutely.
But he may not be the league-winning quarterback he was last year where he was throwing up 35 points for you. And, Jamar Chase was planting 50 points and killing everyone. But listen, I still think he can finish in the top 5 this year. Is he going to bring you to your league championship? No. I think you're going to need more pieces this year for it. But Joe Burrow is still going to be solid again this year. He's still a legend among many dynasty owners going forward, I think. Going to have a solid year. There's nothing wrong with taking him. Just don't look for him to win you your league right out of the gate.
Yep.
Next question I got for you. Is Joe Mixon a clear number 1 running back? Or do we have to worry about them potentially having a pass IFB offense this year? And extending Joe Burrow's passing?
I think it's fine. He was a clear RB1 last year. They passed a lot last year. They had Jamar Chase. They, like I said, they boosted the O-line, which, you could say it helps Joe Burrow, but it would also help Joe Mixon a lot. So I still think he's a clear RB1. I'm not worried at all.
Yeah, no, I think he's a lower-end RB1, right on the fringe there, too. You're going to get a solid running back, I think, when you draft him this year. They have an improved offensive line there, too. So if you're looking for the potential outcomes for him, he could play a little bit higher this year. He's never had this good of an offensive line, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. But there's a lot of weapons on that offense. They'll look to throw, I think, more to these wide receivers as opposed to dumping off the running back position. Unfortunately, Samaje Perine is still also there. Pain in the ass. What can we say? But no, Joe Mixon is still a good running back 1. He's just the lower end running back 1. Next question for you. You already mentioned Jamar Chase, so let's get into him. Is Jamar Chase draftable above Cooper Kupp and Justin Jefferson?
I'm gonna say no. I've already gone on record hating on Cooper Kupp a little bit, but I think both of those guys do better. I think they have less competition on their teams for targets. Jamar Chase with T. Higgins, if T. Higgins is healthy for a year, I think I'm on the same page as you and JJ. I'm expecting a pretty good year out of T. Higgins. So I think I'd take Jefferson and Kupp over Jamar Chase.
I do too, but Jamar Chase is my number 3. It's 1, 2, 3 for me.
He's right there.
He's right there, right in tow with these guys. Kupp is my 1, Justin Jefferson is my 2, and Jamar Chase is my 3. And you can interchange these guys too. I think Kupp is the clear number 1. That's my line, and Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase are going to go back and forth until my rankings come out. It's very close with those two in my book. So you already mentioned T. Higgins. Is he a wide receiver 1 this year?
Oh, getting right into it.
JJ predicted he's going to have a bigger year than Jamar Chase, so I'm asking you a smaller rally of a question.
Real bold, huh? Yeah, so T. Higgins played 14 games last season. Only finished, 13 targets behind Jamar Chase. I think people don't realize how big of a target share T. Higgins actually takes up. I think they assume that everything's going to Jamar Chase, but T. Higgins got a lot of work. If he finishes this year healthy, is playing all season, just under 16 fantasy points per game, puts him right in the RB1 range. He was a wide receiver 2 last season with missing 3 weeks. So I'm going to say yes.
So I've gone back and forth with this. In our Dynasty League, I was even willing to trade a first-round pick for him. JJ talked him up. I thought about this too. He's 23 years old, and he's in an excellent offense with an improved offensive line. I think this is tough. I think his range is really that 12 and 13 spot, so he's right on that cusp. I'm going to say right now, until we get to the wide receiver positions, that I think he slides into slot 12, just getting in the wide receiver 1 range. So yes, I say he's going to be a wide receiver 1 this year. This is the kind of offense that can support 2 wide receiver 1s. Jamar Chase, I think, is still levels above him. Like JJ thinks this year, that's a bold ass take that he took.
That's
go back and listen to that episode, guys. If you haven't heard it, it was a freaking good one. He had some good predictions in that episode. But yeah, I think T. Higgins is a good round 4 wide receiver for you. You could be pleasantly surprised with him. So next question I've got for you at the wide receiver position. Where would you take Tyler Boyd as a late round flyer? Where are you looking at him?
Ooh, Tyler Boyd.
I mean, he would get quite a workload if one of these guys went down.
That's the thing, is if you get Tyler Boyd finished right in that wide receiver 3 range last season. Currently has him going 123. Yeah, I'm going to say round 11, 10, 11.
I would take him before Chase Claypool, I think. So I think you said he was worth the 10th round pick. I would take Tyler Boyd before Chase Claypool. I
agree. Yeah.
I think round 9 is appropriate. Late round 8. I wouldn't hate taking him there, honestly. So I think your assessment is slightly a little bit off there. But yeah, no, I would take him before Claypool. So just give me another divisional comparison there. Is Hayden Hurst a fade? Last question I've got for you.
Yeah. Yep.
Straight up just a fade, huh?
Not about it.
We rushed through that division. Talked about Cougars. It's a good night, Ryan Warner.
All in a good episode. Absolutely.
All in a smooth day's work. We're not as smooth as Zach Wilson, but I think we did pretty good there.
Zach Wilson's about to come out this season and sling it.
NFL MVP in his future. All right, guys, if you like what you hear on Garbage Time Fantasy Football, make sure to like and subscribe to the show. We'd love to go up the charts here on YouTube. We love to interact with you guys in the Heckling Fandom. We always comment on the questions. If your comments are good, they end up on the show too. Make sure if you don't want to see these ugly mugs on your screen, you can listen on audio formats. Those audio formats include places like Google, Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, Iheartradio, and anywhere else you get your podcasts. If you'd like to leave a voicemail that we can play live on the show, and we will play all of them live on the show and answer the comments, even if it's just insulting how we look, You can do that at www.garbagetimeff.com. The speaker is on the right side of your web browser. Click on it. Talk to us. It'll be played live on the show. You don't have to upload it. We have to. Ryan, is there anything you'd like to say to the heckling fandom besides telling them to talk to JJ on Twitter at garbage_timeff? Did you like that transition?
Yeah, not at all. Actually, you and I did make one apology bet that we have not discussed on the show yet.
Would you like to tell them what that was?
Yeah, so Joe and I have an apology bet going that Evan Ingram will outperform Darren Arnold. Joe thinks Evan Ingram's going to ride the bench all season, and Dan Arnold's going to do all the work. So we're going to see what happens. And I think Joe is going to be making an apology bet.
No, I think I'm going to be writing it for you. Guys, if you'd like to do any apology bets too, you can send it to our Instagram at garbagetimefantasyfootball.com. We would love.
We're tracking these. We have a lot going.
Yeah, I know. JJ needs to get on that. So maybe we'll get Ron Seymour to do it. He can actually make a list for it.
Do something.
We have a lot of apology bets, and I feel like I've got the most going into it too.
I don't even remember all the other, like, people could just lie to me and say, "Oh, Ryan, you had this apology bet," and I would just believe them.
Again, guys, too, feel free to watch our sample clips at Garbage Time Fantasy Football on Instagram too. We hope that you have a great night, just like Zach Wilson does every day.